And we are off, folks. We are off.
Well, technically we're on, but hey,
We're off and running, I should say there.
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I fumble my words a lot of times there. I cannot tell you how many outtakes, bloopers I made trying to make my own personal vlogs here for my channel here.
You should release them someday.
I don't know, but I keep deleting them because it's gonna. If I keep them all on my phone there, it's gonna possibly, take up all the space, and I won't be able to make them more.
True.
Yeah, that's the kind of phone I have there. So, good evening, everybody. This is episode 61 of Arknolia and the Doctor, and we're starting a new phrase here. We're starting a new chapter in our music series here. We're going to be taking a look at the progressive rock genre. Now, progressive rock, as we know, is a rock and roll genre where bands, musicians, interpret classical elements into their music, and the lyrics and the arrangements often are meant to express some very interesting topics there, whether it's knights at the round table or a medieval battle or something like that. Something about space and time and everything that comes along with it there. We're going to be starting with the most notable prog rock bands from the 1970s there, and there was a lot out there. Apparently at that time, prog rock was a big thing. We had Emerson Lake and Palmer, the early Genesis with Peter Gabriel and Steve Hackett there before it became a top 40 machine there, as we all knew it through the 1980s. And we also got acknowledgement to other giants such as Yes, and the group that we're going to start with right now, a band that really, needless to say, kind of inspired me to start playing guitar again. I'll explain the situation there. I was taking guitar lessons for a couple of years there, and I just stopped out of disgruntlement for some reason there. Took a couple of years off. Then all of a sudden, I started listening to this one of these groups' two albums that I got from the Value Village store there. It was a thrift shop there. And one thing I noticed was that the covers were definitely unique. There was no print on the front or the back. They were both gatefolds. And believe it or not, I had to walk. Believe it or not, I picked up one of these records and I enjoyed it. That album would later be Lizard by King Crimson. And the second one I got was In the Wake of Paradision by the same band, which was their second record. Now, the one they always go for that the critics and fans always point at was the first record, In the Court of the Crimson King, the one with 21st Century Schizoid Man, Moonchild, the title cut, and one of my favorites, Epitaph. And the guitar playing on that was kind of unique. It was different. Then I started. I knew who Robert Fripp was, but I never heard any of his music there. I just knew he was a guitar player who had very short hair, dressed in a suit and tie. He did a stint with Blondie. He did some work with the David Bowie, Peter Gabriel, and but it took those albums to really get into his band there. Now, Crimson at that time had just broken up, and this was about 1980 late 1980 when I discovered this group, and I started buying the albums. I started buying all the stuff there, including the later ones with John Wetton, the ones with Bill Bruford, and then by the time they reunited with a new lineup in 1981, I was like full blown Crimson mode, and was the start of the fourth lineup with Adrian Belew, Bill Bruford, and Tony Levin, who at that time had just come off of playing with John Lennon on his final solo record. And
Oh yeah.
yes, and it's fits to say that King Crimson had a lot of good musicians on their stable, and they still have some today. Tony Levin, as I mentioned, John Wetton, who also was involved with Uriah Heep at one point, who sadly is no longer with us. Greg Lake, another one who's departed from us. He started out with King Crimson on their first two albums, then later decided to hook up with drummer Carl Palmer and keyboardist Keith Emerson to put together Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Now, keep in mind, it was still do 21st Century Schizoid Man because obviously, Greg had a hand in the songwriting credits there. King Crimson carried on with a various round of lineups there. I believe the second lineup would have to be with Boz Burrell, who later joined Bad Company, and of course drummer Ian Wallace, and of course Mel Collins, who was a saxophone player, who is also involved with the current lineup right now, their seventh lineup with the three drummers. Yeah. Now, King Crimson is supposed to be doing a tour this year, or the next tour. It's going to be called Music Is Our Friend Tour. And I guess they're going to do some makeup dates for the tour they were supposed to continue doing until the COVID-19 hit us from behind. And I guess you could say, King Crimson was one of those bands that really kept themselves to a cult audience. And they had a massive cult following. I mean,
Yeah, generally people don't just, oh yeah, I know Green Crimson, I like some of their stuff. You're either an avid fan or you hate them.
yeah, or just don't know who the hell they are. I mean, like, I still have the T-shirt that I got from 2001 when they played the Royal Oak Music Theater. It was the T-shirt of with this first record on the front there. And the thing about it is that, when I went to the Renaissance festivals in Michigan there, or when I went to Royal Oak, Michigan a couple times, people would notice that shirt. They'd go, drive by, go, King Crimson! Yep. So that's their cult audience right there,
Oh yeah.
And I still get a lot of questions about the shirt there. When I went to Numbers nightclub a couple times there, it's like, who is that? Is that King Crimson? Oh shit, yeah, those a band, yeah. Like, what's your favorite lineup from the band? Well, my favorite would have to be, it's a toss-up between the third lineup and the fifth lineup there.
Yeah, I like all the lineups, but the blue one is the one that really appeals to me.
Yeah, the fourth lineup, Yeah, because the lineup with Boz Burrell, Ian Wallace, Mel Collins, Peter Sinfield, and of course, Robert Fripp himself, the mainstay of the group. That was the third lineup. In between the second record and the third record, Lizard, they were supposed to, and in between the fourth record, Islands, there was a lot of the usual lineup changes going on with that. The bass player and vocalist who sang on Lizard, Gordon Haskell, he just unplugged his guitar and walked off and quit the group for out of no reason there. Apparently, from what some people stated, he was like kind of like a square peg in Fripp's round hole. And I guess they had to start from scratch again. They already got themselves a new drummer, and of course a new bass player who sings. I mean, basically Crimson was in deep trouble there because they had these gigs booked up, and basically they were told, unless you get your shit together, we will not book them. And plus, there was a lot of pressure from them to duplicate the success that the Court of the Crimson King came about.
Right.
And that record became multiply successful over in the UK. And it's still one of their most successful albums today here. And the most recognizable albums that they have been known. I mean, people...
Yeah.
And sadly to say, the people need to know the other albums they put out. Whether it's Starless and Bible Black, Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Red.
We'll pretty much go over them.
Absolutely. We got lots to cover of them,
Well, let's start within the Court of the Crimson King.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The very first song, 21st Century Schizoid Man.
Yeah, I heard that on the radio. I heard that on the radio one time prior to me picking up their records there, and it was like, holy cow, this is monstrous. I mean, the distorted vocals that Greg Lake had had going on, that was like, wow. Back then, it was like a big thing. Years later,
that song would have hooked you.
It did. It did actually hook me. It was this massive song here that's like, holy cow. And wow. That's when I realized, man, this Robert Fripp must be something, because he was mentioned by the DJ, Robert Fripp and King Crimson with 21st Century, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, that song, when I finally picked it up on the vinyl there, back at their old record shop there, I was like, wow, this is a damn good record there. The title cut is pretty interesting, and the track Moonchild is kind of like kind of like a prelude to the ambient music that would Brian Eno would later generate after leaving Roxy Music.
Yeah. The second song, I Talk to the Wind,
Yep.
is kind of or not anti, but it's antithetical of what they were doing.
Yeah.
But it's a great song on its own.
A good song, yes, very good song. Flute work by Ian MacDonald, who, by the way, would later leave after the after the tour that promoted this album. He would later become one of the founding members of Foreigner. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the next one, Epitaph.
Oh yeah, that was a pretty interesting song to listen to because the tone, the mellotron, and the arrangements. And I gotta point this out. Back then, King Crimson often had these these little. They would mix two tunes into one, but instead of putting a slash between them, the two titles there, they would put, for instance, the first track from the Lizard album, Circus, featuring Rise of the Chameleons.
Yeah.
Or including Rise of the Chameleons, I meant to say, my bad. They did this with Epitaph, Epitaph including March for No Reason and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And I think that the March for No Reason was the abridged of the track there, and I believe possibly the last few minutes of the track there may have been Tomorrow and Tomorrow, if I'm correct there. And of course, we cannot forget the track Moonchild, and of course the title cut, and of course the title cut there, featuring Dance at the Puppets and the Return of the Fire Witch. That was incorporated into the song as well there.
Yeah. And this album was released 1969. Let me get you the date.
Yep.
If I can get my computer to operate.
All right there. Let me look it up as well there. And it was after.
Oh, I have it. I just can't. There we go. Oh.
Ah, there you go.
It almost went through it.
Oops.
Yeah, it was 1969. Here we go. October 16th.
1969. Island Records in the UK, Atlantic in the US.
Yeah. And like you say, people still buy it.
They still do. It's probably, there's how many anniversary editions out there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And this was also the start where the original lineup would later cease to exist. There was a lot of tensions between the band members. There was a few emotions being played here and there. Fripp offered to leave first, but Ian MacDonald and drummer Michael Giles decided to depart from the group. Making way for a couple of their new members. Greg Lake stayed. And then, of course, Peter Sinfield, who was their lyricist and was their lighting genius. He did the lights for their live performances there. He was also the co-producer and a co-arranger of the songs. So basically, the nucleus of Crimson was Sinfield and Fripp.
Yeah. The other people were just kind of there.
They were there. Well, kind of basically, yeah. Well, after the first lineup, collapsed. In fact,
on that next album, In the Wake of Poseidon.
Poseidon, yeah, there you go. I keep pronouncing Podisian. I don't know why I do that, man. I don't know. Poseidon.
But like you said, Fripp and Sinfield were pretty much constants. And they had Michael Giles. Greg Lake.
Yep, Greg Lake there, who stayed on this album just as well there. In fact,
but he's only there for a couple of tracks.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, plus, here's something else. There was the song Cadence and Cascade about two groupies that they met while on their previous tour there. That song was the first to feature Gordon Haskell as their new frontman. Now there was a version out there which featured Lake on the original demos there of that song there. I guess that's included on the anniversary edition for that album, if I'm taken there, or one of those
Probably
collections.
I don't have the anniversary edition.
Neither do I, man. I just bought the 30th anniversary edition when it came out in 1999 there. Remember, Fripp at that time had gained all rights of all the Crimson albums from the first album up to the Three of a Perfect Pair album there.
Yeah. Well, the first song is Peace, the Beginning, which is a short little ditty.
Yep.
And then it goes into Pictures of a City, which is a pretty good song.
Yeah, absolutely there, yes. And then it goes into the track I mentioned, Cadence and
Cascade.
And then the title track afterwards, titled, which is a
In
pretty
the Wake
damn
of
good,
Poseidon.
which is a damn good song there. Side 2 opens with Peace, a theme. And then it goes into a single called Cat Food, which was released as a separate single originally, but decided to include it on the album as well there.
Yeah.
And then it goes...
Interesting song.
Yeah, an interesting song there. It also features the piano playing techniques of a man named Keith Tippett, if I pronounce his last name right. And he was a damn good keyboard player when you think about it, or piano player, I just meant to say. My bad. So then it goes into probably one of the most powerful pieces I have ever heard from Crimson, The Devil's Triangle. Now, this thing interpreted a piece called Mars, the Bringer of War, into that track.
Right.
And it was like, I remember having a conversation with Fred Berger, the editor of Propaganda Magazine. He had talked about the piece Mars, the Bringer of War in this Facebook post. And I figured, you know what? I'm going to download the track. I'm going to get the link from the YouTube or whichever webpage I can find it on. Add it as a comment, said, check this out. This came out in 1970, and this this includes elements of the Mars piece into that track there.
Right.
And of course, I had to get it from this one MP3 music streaming service here, which I could do it for free, by the way. And he was like, wow, I never knew about this there. He later messaged me on privately and said, wow, I didn't know anything about this. Thank you for introducing this to me there. That's it. No problem. So, and of course, the album ends with Peace and End.
Yeah.
Which I guess said about finding peace within.
Yeah, and it basically holds the theme. It starts with Peace, the Beginning.
Yeah. And a peace, a theme, and then Peace and End.
Right.
And then we go on to the third album featuring Gordon Haskell and his only appearance with the band, Lizard. Starts off with Circus, including Rise of the Chameleons, Indoor Games.
Entry of the Chameleons.
Entry of the Chameleons, thank you. The second track, Indoor Games, was about people who think of life as a game of Monopoly. Yeah. And now the interesting track on that side one, was Happy Family. That song was about the breakup of the Beatles, which occurred that same year, 1970, when they were working on that album. And it said, and you notice on the cover art of that album, which by the way features little paintings and elements, to add to give detail to the songs there. Like on the back cover, there's a battle going on. That interprets the piece Battle of Glass Tears. Now there's a piece of the Beatles, Paul with a knife and coming out of his pants, John holding a plant with Yoko as the flower, George, doing something here. George with his Kama Sutra, legs crossed and all that thing, and Ringo as dressed up in a clown's outfit there. So basically that song was about what was going on with the Fab Four there and how they broke up, and those details getting into that. And of course, side one ends with Lady of the Dancing Water. which I guess is a pretty song when you look at it. If you're with your loved one there and you want to put on something to slow dance to, that would be a good song there. And that side two opens with the piece Lizard. Prince Rupert, sing with Prince Rupert Awakes, The Peacock's Tail, you know, what is called Bolero, which including the Battle of Glass Tears, and then later goes to Prince Lamett's, Prince, what's that Prince name? Prince Rupert. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Prince Rupert's Lamette, which Fripp's guitar sounds like bagpipes. It comes in, it's like a funeral march. The guitar comes in, goes right into the middle, it just fades right in and slowly fades out throughout the whole track. And the very last piece was called Big Top, which is a mellotron, a couple of drums here and there, blah, blah, blah. Kind of like they were improvising something there. And then later, as the track fades out, it speeds up, closing the album, period. And, and I'll let you do the next one there, Islands, featuring Boz Burrell, who later joined Bad Company, as we stated.
Yeah, the next album was Islands, and it's got some interesting bits on it.
Yeah, my favorite on it was not only my favorite would have to be old Sailor's Tale, because that was such a haunting track to listen to there.
Yeah, they start off with Formentera Lady.
Yep, good song there.
Yeah. Then they followed that one up with Sailor's Tale.
Yep. Mellotron in the background there, oozing, fading upward, as you could say there, played in a very haunting way. And the end of that track is very do, 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 with that Mellotron. It's like, holy cow, dude. That is frightening to listen to. It's like, yeah. Now, the next track, which closes out the album, The Letters, it's about a female writing to the wife or girlfriend of that significant other, hey, your husband has produced a deceit inside of me. Basically, it's kind of like one of those War of the Roses that some of these radio stations do, where it's those scenarios. It's basically about a woman telling one's wife or girlfriend, hey, your husband cheated on you, and I'm pregnant with his baby, if I'm correct on this here.
Right.
And
then the next one's Ladies of the Road,
which is about groupies.
Gee, I wonder what that's about.
Yep, groupies. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the next one will be Song of the Seagulls, which is an orchestra piece there. And it goes into the title cut, Islands, which it's kind of emotional to hear when you think about it, because when my dad passed away after me and my ma got home from the hospital, that song came to my mind. I just picked up my guitar and just started strumming the chords of that song there. And for about a year and a half, whenever I played that song, I would break into tears, because that was the first song that came to my mind after my dad's passing.
Yeah, you just had the association.
Yeah. It was just, it's an emotional song to listen to when you think about it there. And especially with the bridge there.
Yeah.
All islands join hands, 'neath heaven's sea. And then we go into the next record, featuring a new lineup. Boz Burrell leaves. He decided to start Bad Company with two members of Free and the former guitarist from Mott the Hoople. And then that band decides to sign with Swan Song Records, Zeppelin's record label there, and of course be managed by Peter Grant, Zeppelin's manager. And then we go to Larks, Tongues, and Aspic, featuring John Wetton, percussionist Jamie Murr, violin player and keyboardist David Cross, and Bill Bruford, who used to be in Yes. Remember the album, the Yes album with Starship Trooper and I See No Good People? He was on that album there. So I don't know what it was. I guess he saw King Crimson as a better outlet when he departed, and of course, Bruford would later join King Crimson again for the fourth lineup in the '80s there, and later on during the '90s with the double trio.
Yeah. And of course, this one starts out with Lark's Tongue and Aspic
Part one. Yep.
Then it goes into Book of Saturday.
Oh yeah, that's true. And basically, some of the topics on that there, including the song, which starts off on side two, "Easy Money," basically was kind of a cynical look at the record industry when you look at it there.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And then we skipped Exiles, which closed the album out, or
Yeah,
not album.
The side one out. Side two starts with "Easy Money," the song I just mentioned, an instrumental called "The Talking Drum," and then goes into Lark's Tongue's Aspect Part 2, which Crimson did continue to play throughout the '80s. There, they did. I remember there was a double CD they put it out, recorded in Montreal, that my girlfriend Nancy had at that time. It was all. They would close their show out before the encore with a more faster version of that track there. And of course later on we go into Lark's Tongue. No, excuse me, Starless and Bible Black.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other songs on that record is kind of like a take on the music industry as well, like Lammet. The second track is kind of like good details of that. And by the way, the lyrics.
The first one, The Great Deceiver.
Yep, good song there as well there. So I guess Fripp and the boys there were kind of becoming very disgruntled with the music industry around them, because I think one of the reasons is that their label was like pressuring them to come up with another recorded Crimson King album there, or another 21st Century Schizoid Man. But to do that, you would have to have the original lineup, and things would have to be settled with the original lineup, But sadly, it didn't go that way. Robert Fripp, is keeping the band going and going and going, So there's going to be some issues.
Yeah, he's pretty much the constant.
Yeah, the mainstay of the group, the leader of the band, even though he refuses to consider himself the leader. I remember he wrote this in the liner notes of the Absent Lovers CD booklet there. He wrote that some journalists said that King Crimson was never a group but a project featuring the same guy. Few disputed this, and he said that the only time Crimson was not a group was between the first album and the third album. At that time, we all detailed the things that went on during that time there.
Right.
Basically, Crimson is a group, neither or less. If this journalist is going to come out and say that, he's going to have to look at the other lineups of the Jefferson Starship, Jefferson Airplane, because God knows how many members that group has had there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or the constant lineup of Guns N' Roses. That had to be a lot changing, nevertheless there. Remember, they had an all-female horn section. They were considered members of the group there. A lot of shit coming up there, believe it or not.
Yeah. Third song on that album is We'll Let You Know.
Yep, absolutely, which is a good song there, which is an instrumental, I guess an improv piece that they put together. The Night Watch is the fourth one. Trio, another emotional instrumental, because I started crying soon after my girlfriend died. I started playing that album, and I got to that track. The way the chords were performed was just, I just started bawling for some reason. And it still hurts to play that song today, believe it or not.
I can understand it.
Yes, and of course that side one closes out with, what's it called? The Mincer, I think it's pronounced? The Mincer?
The Mincer.
The Mincer, yeah. And of course, the two instrumentals on side two, the title cut and Fracture, which, by the way, I've seen a few videos from a couple guitar players talking about how impossible it is to play that track.
Well, the only problem with that thinking is they played it.
Yeah, that's true. But somehow this guitar player, I forgot his name. I just got to look him up again. He had to go through how many hours and hours just to get down that piece perfectly, or somewhat perfectly, because it is one unique pieces to play there.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, they're right. I tried many times to play like Robert Fripp, and I just couldn't do it. I have to come up with my own style. But I hold Fripp in high regards as an influence for me to get back into playing guitar after I heard his work. I even tried to sound like it. I even tried to do a little thing, believe it or not. I tried to recreate the chords that he was playing on during Sailor's Tale. But I thought it was on a slide thing there at first. But turns out it was just him and his fingers there. But I tried this with a hand brush, the handle of a hairbrush, all across the fretboard. And yeah, it sounded like total crap, but I didn't have anything else at that time there. Which, by the way, I should have got me a slide thing there when I was out earlier today. Dang gummit. Because I was looking to get that. Because you saw in one of the videos I did where I did that slide guitar piece, had to use a AA battery.
I hadn't seen it. I saw it, but I hadn't watched it yet.
Yeah, definitely go check it out there. All right.
Okay, next album is Red.
Red. Yep. And that's by that time, Crimson was now a trio. David Cross, he played on the album, but he would later depart as well. And of course, he would, where's the one there? Oh yeah. Oh yes. Of course, believe it or not, that would be the final King Crimson album for that period of time. A year later, they released a live album entitled USA, which was recorded at various places across the USA. And underneath the credits there, it said, "Rest in peace," meaning King Crimson was now no more. Robert Fripp would have to go on as a solo act, I guess. He would do albums with Brian Eno. One of them was No Pussyfooting, was one of them. Evening Star was another one. And he will later go on to work with David Bowie and Peter Gabriel. And of course, a few years later on, he decides to put together a new group featuring Adrian Belew on guitar there. Tony Levin, who, as I mentioned, played bass on John Lennon's final solo record and also worked with Peter Gabriel just as well there. And of course, Bill Bruford returning to the fold. They decided to call it King Crimson.
Yeah.
And then King Crimson was back again with a new sound, a new look, and a new audience. They were able to, they basically had caught the attention of the new wave crowd there. The bands are in the groups like...
We hadn't talked about Red yet.
Yeah, that's true there. We got to talk about that record. Of course, the title cut, and of course, Fallen Angel, and of course, One More Red Nightmare. Then we have, what's the track on side 2 that begins, because like the last one, Providence, yeah. And then, of course, the song Starless.
Yeah.
Which is a 12-minute piece there. I guess Crimson was doing during their recent tour there. Now, of course, we went through the live album, as we mentioned, USA. Crimson would decide to disband, and of course, as we mentioned, they would come back with the new, as we mentioned, the album Discipline, featuring the new lineup.
And this album has got some incredible songs on it.
Real good songs there. Matty Kudasai, Elephant Talk, the first, what? Do you remember the show Fridays that used to air Friday nights on ABC?
I don't think I ever saw it.
Oh, I saw it a couple of times. It was ABC's rivalry to compete with the Saturday Night Live crowd.
Right.
Yes, and what they had a few well-known people in their casts there. They had Michael Richards, who later co-joined the Seinfeld show, and of course Larry David, who later starred in an HBO show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and they have a couple others there as well. And of course, they would also feature Father Guido Sarducci. Now,
Right.
one of the acts they had advertised, King Crimson. That's when we saw the guitar work of Adrian Belew. And that's when I noticed that Robert Fripp plays sitting on a stool. I was like, huh? Because usually guitar players don't do that. They usually just stand up and do their work. But Fripp is a seated guitar player. I guess that the kind of chords that he plays and the kind of licks he does, it requires him to sit down for what I take it there.
Yeah.
And of course now Fripp has kind of like changed his seating style. He got a new posture when he plays guitar and all while sitting down nowadays there. And I
Yeah.
guess, and of course, the other seated guitar player that definitely worth mentioning is Jeff Skunk Baxter, who worked with the Doobie Brothers
Yeah.
and Steely Dan.
Yeah.
That's true there, yeah.
Following Elephant Talk, which is a cool song,
Frame
is
by
frame
by frame, yep. Which, by the way, one of the things that stand out for this record is a guitar synthesizer that Adrian Belew used a lot. He used it with David Bowie. He used it when he
Yep.
was toured with the Talking Heads. He was a part of a seven-man lineup that the Talking Heads did in 1980. And he
Yeah.
also, and by the way, he also featured touring with Frank Zappa, believe it or not, just as well there.
Yeah. And then, of course, the album side closes with Indiscipline, which is, I carried around with me
I
for
know.
days and days.
Yeah, but we don't know what that it really is.
No, but he looked at it and he wondered if he still liked it,
Which he did.
which I do,
Yep.
or something like that. I forget exactly what he said.
Yeah. Now,
But that's a pretty neat song, too.
yeah, and interesting there. It makes a listener wondering, what it is he talking about? What is in it?
Yeah, because he never revealed it.
Yeah, exactly. There was a gun or an object, a book or a telephone or something like that. Now the first track on side one, Tilla Gunji, is that pronounced?
Thilahujinsi.
Okay, thanks. That song actually was about crime on the streets. And the story was, believe it or not, that Belew was taking a tape recorder to record some actual crime scenes of it going down in the streets of New York. And apparently he almost got confronted by a bunch of thugs himself who tried to explain to them, hey, I'm in this band, I'm recording some stuff, and that was about it. But that shit scared the hell out of him. And apparently, because the snippets of Belew talking about that experience, is featured on that track.
Yeah, it's a great track to listen to. And the next one, The Sheltering Sky,
Oh yeah,
sounds like it has a very Eastern Indian influence to me.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, very good song there.
Great instrumental.
Great instrumental, and of course, the album closes in general with the track "Discipline," the title cut there. And this shows you the chemistry that Fripp and Belew had.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely there. Yes. Now, of course, the following year they would release Beat, featuring the same lineup. The two respectable. One of the most hit songs from that album and their first official music video would be for Heartbeat.
Yeah.
I remember seeing on the program Night Flight on USA Network during the weekends, and it was like, wow, interesting track there when you think about it. And also, it's kind of like maybe a love song, but it's more like a mellow song when you look at it there.
Yeah.
But it was, Fripp, it's actually Belew, fantasizing, seeing this one model everywhere he goes. It's kind of like that kind of feel there. Everywhere I turn, I see her face, la-di-da. Something like that, I guess
Yeah.
you'd say there.
Of course, you had Neil and Jack and Me.
Yep. And I guess, so what's that one track?
Sartori.
Satori in Tangier.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, a year and a half later, we would see the third studio album from this lineup. Three
Well,
of a per, three of a.
you still.
What again?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go
You
ahead.
still got 4 songs here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Five.
I never. Well, I never bought Beat, unfortunately, there, and I didn't get
Oh, I
the
pretty much
album
have
that
them
came out here,
all.
which is Three of a Perfect Pair, which came out in 1984, and this will be the final album for that particular lineup. I guess the idea is that, and many bands have often, been accused of not following this rule there. When the band sees themselves, they've completed all their tasks, they accomplished what they wanted to. When they set out to seek, they got what they wanted. When there's nowhere left to go, musically, personally, or direction-wise, the band decides to call it quits. That's what KMFDM did in the past. That's what White Zombie did before Rob Zombie became a solo act. And King Crimson did this as well. If they to continue to carry on, they become what Fripp would call self-parodies. Carrying on
Yeah.
something that's the same thing over and over and over and over. And from this time, Fripp decided, to do some more solo work. He released a couple albums on his own. I think he also did an album with his wife Tanya Wilcox, I guess it was called there. He also later do a couple of albums with David Sylvain, the guy who played in the band Japan. I guess it was a new wave outfit there. They released a couple of albums on Virgin Records in the early 90s there. And he also put together a guitar playing class called the League of Crafty Guitarists. And it was he would also feature these guys on a program called New Visions, which is more like an experimental, avant-garde program that the VH1 network often had on there. They would show these, avant-garde artists like Mark Egan, Bill Laswell, a couple others as well there. And, Gesundheit. And Fripp would have have the League of Crafty Guitarists, doing their songs there, like Bicycling in Afghanistan, I guess, was one of the tracks they would play. It was like an orchestra with acoustic guitars. And there was, get this, there was this video of Fripp and some of the members of this project, doing some guitar playing there while they do the slow stuff. They played this slow piece there, which name I don't know. But
Yeah.
during the piece, Robert does his guitar solo, and then slowly he gets up from his chair and he starts standing up and playing. It's like, and the comments on the YouTube video where I found this, it was like Fripp standing. Heresy! Because as we know, Fripp is a seated guitar player, as we know, left and right. And it's like, holy cow, And you notice Fripp had kind of like, grown his hair out a little bit. He slicked it back. And what someone wrote, League of Crafty Guitarists in the front, King Crimson in the back. But, of course, later on, during the 1990s, it was announced King Crimson would come back again. But here's something different. It was lineup 4 once again, but with 2 new members added to the mix. War guitarist Trey Gunn and Pat Mosto. What's his last name again, Dane Gummit?
I don't know.
But Pat Mosto, let me look up his name here. Let me hear, because I have such a bitch of a time.
Oh, here he is.
There he is.
Pat Mostello.
All right, thank you. This man
Or
was
actually, Pat Mostellato.
okay. There we go. Thank you. This man was a former drummer of the group Mr. Mister, who you remember from Broken Wings, that song from the early '80s there, from '84,
Yeah.
'85. I Wear the Face. Kylie. Now, he cited King Crimson as one of his favorite bands, and now he's getting the chance to play with them. How geeked up must he be now
Oh
at
man.
that point? He's still with
Yeah.
them. He's still with them, by the way. And by the way, and of course, these two guys were added on to the new lineup. It was two guitarists, Fripp and Ballou, two bass players, Gunn and Levin, and two drummers, Pat and Bill, a double trio.
Yeah. And
And
this album was Thrack.
yep, came out in 1995 on Virgin Records. Actually, was also the start of their record label, Discipline Global Mobile, which was owned and run by Robert Fripp. And this is where the artists controlled the rights of not only their music, the lyrics, but also their artwork on the album.
Oh,
Yeah. Apparently, one of the problem was that Fripp was having with EG was that, EG Records would own the rights to those earlier Crimson albums, and they would do whatever the heck they want with them, including take out the original names of EG's founding members.
right.
John Gaden and David Ettenhoven. Now, their names, David and John, were removed when the Recorded Crimson King was released on the CD originally. When Fripp got the rights to those albums, he had the album remastered, and he felt necessary to add David and John's names to the liner notes of the album there. As to why the EG decided to do this, but still remains unknown. Now, I got to talk about this here. The war guitar that Trey Gunn plays is a American-made touch guitar. It's a type of instrument that combines both the bass and the strings, the melodic strings, on a single fretboard. It is related to the Chapman stick. Well, something popped up here. I got to get rid of it. Now, it's another two-handed tapping instrument. It was designed for either two-handed tapping or strumming. And I guess the guy who came up with it, I guess his name is, let's see here. Let me look it up on the Wikipedia. Okay, it's going to take a while, knowing my computer being the whack job that it is. It has 14 strings on it, and it was designed for, it usually comes in between 7 and 14 strings. Now, one of the best-known war guitar players, of course, is Trey Gunn, and Colin Marston of the band Behold the Archopolis. If I'm cutting here, and basically, that is one unique instrument to play there when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time to even learn that, because it's a tapping, you play it like a keyboard on a guitar, when you think about it there. But basically, you're able to do a bass and regular strings at the same time there. At the same thing with the Chapman stick, which Tony Levin was made popular throughout the 80s there. Which I remember seeing him play during that performance on Fridays back in 1981.
Yeah. I was just looking at their discography, and they actually have more live albums than they do studio albums.
Yeah, those were taken for various recordings that I guess either the radio stations or other Pink King Biscuit Flower Hour, remember that show there, would
Right.
record, and I guess they get a hold of those recordings and they release those albums. I guess it's called the King Crimson Collectors Club, I guess they have it called.
Yeah.
And they have an Absent Lovers, the 2-disc set that my girlfriend had. That was actually recorded from their last show in Montreal for a Canadian station there. It was a broadcast live that night. And all those recordings were released, of course, on DGM, Discipline Global Mobile, as just as well. Now, I don't know if they released any other acts on that record label, but the one I remember was John Paul Jones, the bass player and arranger keyboardist from Led Zeppelin. He had an
Right.
album on that label called The Thunder Thief. And believe it or not, I mentioned this before, he was the opening act for King Crimson during their 2001 Level 5 tour, which I saw play at the Music Theater, Royal Oak Music Theater in Royal Oak, Michigan, back in 2001 there, as I mentioned.
Right.
And I mentioned this before that the guy that was playing with Paul Jones was Nick Beggs from Kaja Gugu. I was like, holy cow. If I would have known that he was red, I would have come up and say hi to him. Again, now his great work on that album I mentioned, Crazy People's Right to Speak. I was like, dang gummit, how should I not have known, man? Yeah, but then again, we're not told ahead of things until the last minute, I guess you could say there.
Right.
Hey, Rocco, what's up, dude? And also, shout out to Minnesota Vikings fan with Real Fuck TV there. Definitely, we'll have to have a lot to talk about the streams that C-Man, Joe, all that bullshit later on this evening. Definitely. And also, I don't. You got time to hang around to the next hour, dude?
I might have a little bit.
Okay, there.
I actually have a list for King Crimson.
Oh yeah. Well, by the way, let me also conclude. Thrak and of course would come out, and then later on, I guess that trio, that was the fifth lineup for that group, the double trio.
Yeah.
And of course, in 2000, it was back to being a four-piece. Bruford was gone, Tony Levin was gone. It was Blue. Master what's his last name again? Dane Gummit?
Mastello, I think it's what
Mas-
I'd have to look at it again.
Yeah, I know. It's good to know. I'm not the only one to have an issue with pronouncing long last names there. But it featured the ex Mr. Drummer, and of course Trey Gunn once again, along with Fripp and Blue, and they would record one badass record called The Construction of Light. And if anybody who has not heard this album, this is Crimson at its heaviest. The song Lark's Tongues and Aspic Part 4, badass to the core. The World's My Oyster Soup Kitchen Floor Wax Museum, another badass. Prozac Blues was another good one. Fractured, another, which I guess was a sequel to the Fracture track there from 74. Right. And by this time, they did something very unique with the title and some of the title on the tracks on this album there. For every C, they added a capital K along with it, meaning Key Crimson. And it's like, it's kind of unique how they did that. Now, the last track on this album there, Heaven and Earth, was absolutely mind-blowing to listen to. This features Robert Fripp with a thing called a Soundscape Guitar. It's a guitar synthesizer. I saw him work it a couple of times. He makes all these sounds, like a synthesizer sounds through a guitar. And he has a big, massive cabinet doing that there. Now also keep in mind, the members of King Crimson often, when he was a double trio, often would branch out into other projects like Project 5, Project 6, Project 7 there. There was an album I bought from them, I guess it was Project 2, featuring Fripp, Gunn, and Ballou playing drums on this piece, on these tracks. It was called Space Groove. And I bought it for my girlfriend there because she expressed interest in it. She liked the King Crimson too. So she liked it. I bought it for her, and as she turns out, it was a damn good record as well there. It was all instrumental, of course.
And of course, they spell Project Project.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, that lineup, of course, that would carry on for a couple of years there, up until about, I guess, for some reason we haven't heard anything from them there. Then we find out, Fripp was given his walking papers for some reason. I don't know what the issue was. but there was a falling out between him and Fripp. Fripp, decides to revamp Crimson once again, taking, the ex-Mr. drummer, the former drummer of Ministry and REM, Bill Raffian, I guess that if that's his last name is pronounced. If it isn't, correct me. And he would bring in back Adrian Belew. He would bring back saxophone player Mel Collins. And he also bring in this new guy named Jack, whose last name I cannot pronounce. And he would come up with the seventh lineup, 3 drummers.
Yeah.
They were doing their touring, and this time Fripp decides to put himself in the light. Because in the past few tours with Belew and the others there, he would have only a small dim light on him as he played. Just a blue light aimed at him.
Right.
He decided he wants to be loved once again. He wants to be seen. And so, therefore, we see Robert Fripp in full. And of course, got to give credit where credit is due. Fripp has this unique tuning standard. Where it's, I got to go how it's done again. You have to go look how he does his tuning of his guitar. But most likely I won't be able to do anything with it, or let alone try to copy it. But let's see here. Let me look up Fripp's tuning here. Blah, blah, blah. Robert Fripp standard tuning. There we go. Look, give it a while there. It's going to be coming up here. Now, it was invented by Robert Fripp in September of 1983. He started using this tuning before for his, let me see there. Blah, blah, blah. Let me do this. Give it a while, give it a while, give it a while, give it a while. There we go. Here we got it here. Now, the guitar strings are assigned the notes G2, C2, G2, D3, A3, E4, G4, from lowest to highest. The 5 lowest open strings are each tuned to an interval of a perfect fifth, C, G, G, D, G, A, E. The 2 highest strings are a minor third apart, the E and the G. All fifths tuning is typically used for mandolins, cellos, violas, violins, and on the guitar, tuning the strings in fifths would mean the first string would have to be a high B, something that was unpractical until recently. Now, if this tuning provides a good approximation of all fifths tuning, like other regular tunings, this tuning here allows chord fingerings to be shifted from one set to strings to another. It was developed by Robert Fripp. He taught this new standing tuning in guitar craft courses beginning in 1985. Thousands of guitar craft students continue to use the tuning. And like other alternative tunings for guitar, this tuning provides challenges and new opportunities to guitar players who have developed music especially suited to the new standard tuning, or NST as it's called here. And it places the strings under great tension than the standard tuning. Standard sets of guitar strings do not work well with the tuning, as the lowest strings are too loose and the highest strings may snap under increased tension. Special sets of NST strings have been available for decades, and some guitarists have assembled NST sets for individual strings, which is interesting as well there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Robert Fripp was the guy who came up with that, and he still uses it to this very day.
Yeah.
Credit to Robert Fripp, because even in all the years of experimenting with Frippatronics, guitar soundscapes, he's still trying out different things here and there. In fact, I believe he has His wife Tanya Wilcox, has a couple of vlogs they have him and Robert often share called Agony Aunts, I guess it's called, where they do a lot of things together. They make short music videos doing cover tunes, including Black Sabbath's Paranoid, Enter Sandman by Metallica. That's a triple O in its own self there. King
Right.
Crimson covering Metallica. Whoa. But definitely look it out there. And Fripp, by the way, has music for quiet spaces, I guess it's called, on his personal YouTube channel, which is all instrumental tracks, by the way, with the Soundscape guitar that he features. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but list will tell you songs I like anyway.
Go right ahead.
Although it doesn't cover all of them because I like a lot of songs by them.
Yeah, that's true.
But I got a top 15.
Go right ahead, dude.
Number 15 is Indoor Games.
Yep.
Number 14 is Epitaph. Number 13 is Happy Family.
Yep, about the Beatles, as we mentioned, breaking up.
Number 12 is Cat Food.
Yep.
Number 11 is Pictures of a City.
Yep. And by the way, I should mention this. Even though Michael Giles, the original drummer, left the group, he agreed to play on that second record, as out of courtesy, credit to him for doing that.
Right. Number 10 is I Talk to the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9 is Thelugency.
Mm.
Number 8 is Indiscipline.
Yep.
Number 7 is Elephant Talk.
Oh yeah, great synth guitar work from Adrian Belew.
Number 6 is The Sheltering Sky.
The Sheltering Sky, yeah.
Not many storms are sheltering. Number 5 is Court of the Crimson King.
The title cut there.
Number 4 is Dinosaur. There's
Dinosaur.
one that he really gets into the guitar synth.
And which, by the way, when you really think about it, the lyrics of that song is about a man, meaning how much of a jackass he was in his earlier years, and him coming to realize that.
Yeah. And number 3 is Circus.
Yeah, which I understand is about the corruption of innocence, according to one of the songwriters, Peter Sinfield.
Yeah, I mean, I like the song.
It is.
It's something else.
Yeah, it is.
Number 2 is 21st Century Schizoid Man.
Yep, the main song from them.
And number 1 is going to be a surprise.
Yep.
And you can only hear it on live albums because they didn't do it studio.
Yep.
Heroes. Their version of Heroes.
Yep. Which, of course,
incredible.
Yep, absolutely. Let's not forget, Fripp played guitar
Well, they
in
played
that
on
song.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Fripp, I guess.
They played on the Bowie song.
Yep, absolutely. Fripp was contacted by Brian Eno to come to fly out there to check on to play with David Bowie on his work there. And of course, the rest is history. And of course, Belew just as well there. He would contribute tracks to the Scary Monsters album from 1980.
Yeah.
It was either him or Robert Fripp, and I guess that's probably how those two kind of met, I guess you could say there. All right.
Yeah.
All right, there.
That's my list.
All right, nice. It was a good one. It is a definitely good one there.
It's hard not to have a good list with that group.
Absolutely.
I mean, I didn't even have Fallen Angel, Lark's Tongue and Aspic.
Yeah.
Red.
Yep.
I'm doing that off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I nearly did a top 20 to include them.
Yeah.
But that's what I got for that.
Okay, there. And I guess that's going to conclude it for this episode of our prog rock series here. There.
And Monday we'll move on to Yes.
Yeah, the band Yes. It's
Right.
another who is kind of like split into two versions of Yes. Needless to say, there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get offline and get myself prepared for Real Swag TV. I guess they're starting right now as we end this program here. All right. So for Arknolia and myself, guys have a good one, and we will be back here this coming Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You guys have a good one. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
All right, there's.